One of you wonderful humans asked me to talk about the difference between anxiety versus rumination, and I'm happy to do so. One of the easiest ways to understand the big difference between anxiety and rumination is anxiety is usually forward thinking and rumination is usually backward thinking. So anxiety is perseveration and worry about things that could or may possibly occur in the future. Typically, this is how we look at anxiety primarily from a psychological aspect. And rumination is actually derived more from depression, and it is thinking about things that have already happened. It's a type of negative thinking, negative thought process, beating yourself about things that have already happened. My brain is going way faster than my mouth today. Good morning, everyone. So anxiety is derived from the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So it starts in the amygdala, goes to the prefrontal cortex. This is where our worry senses come from. It's also where our fight or flight response comes from. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. There you go. That is from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala sends signals to the prefrontal cortex, and we create anxiety and worry about things that are going to happen, possibly going to happen, or may not even happen. Worrying about things that could happen. That's how anxiety works. And rumination is looking at things that have already happened. It's a way for us to beat ourselves up, basically. It's a way for us to engage in self-abuse. And rumination comes from the areas of the brain whereas rumination tends to come more from the cingulate cortex. So here, I think. Basically, both of them react with our hippocampus, which is where we store a lot of our memory and things like that. Hippocampus? Yeah, hippocampus. And both have an awful lot to do with the default mode network. That is the brain type system that our body is most likely to go to. This is kind of like the whole foundation of psychology, is we're actually working to change the default mode network. So instead of automatically going towards beating yourself up about things that already happened or worried about things that may or may not happen in the future, we actually start to retrain the brain to go down different pathways. The way I used to describe this was, imagine you had a big bundle of tubes, and some of them are like this big, and some of them are this big. And there's a balloon at each one. Now, at the top, you've got a bucket of water, and you're just going to dump that whole bucket of water, sploosh, down on that whole pile of tubes. Which tube is going to get the most water? It's the one that's the biggest, right? So that would be your anxiety. That's your default mode network. And what we work on is titrating, shrinking down that tube so that it's smaller. Not necessarily non-existent. I mean, that would be awesome, but unlikely. And then strengthening and expanding the other tubes in your brain, neural pathways in your brain, to create calmer, more rational, more involved, more constructive thinking aspects, encouraging our analytical thinking side of the brain and encouraging our problem solving side of the brain without a panic response or without a self-abuse response. This is what psychology is all about. So rumination and anxiety, they both work with the prefrontal cortex. Anxiety comes from the amygdala, and a little bit of rumination comes from the amygdala, but mostly it comes from the cingulate cortex. So there you go. I hope that helps. And now that's something you know, and knowing stuff is cool, and so are you.